this is the perfect time to buy real estate. And if the numbers make sense now, it's going to make sense in a year from now too. And as you come across some of these issues that will inevitably be some of these properties, whatever they could be, lean into it and actually be grateful that you have these issues. Hey folks, this is Greg Cullen with Leverage Hustle, running the Mentorship series. Today we have Shaquille from Louisville joining us, learning a little bit more about real estate along the way. Shaquille, how you doing today?
Man, I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me and to talk about real estate as well. It's always a great thing to chat about.
Definitely, man. I always love to chat with people from Louisville, a different market, different area to play in. So really excited to chat about this with you today. Shaq, I know you had some questions today. Let's jump into those. What kind of questions do you have?
Yeah, kind of. So I guess a little bit of background about myself and kind of where I'm at in the real estate process is that I've been pre-approved for an FHA loan. I've been pre-approved by 2 lenders. And right now I'm in the process of identifying certain properties that I would like to house hack, so to speak. So my realtor is currently looking for anywhere from 2 to 4 units. The preference is a 4-unit in certain areas that we have identified that would be a great investment. So that's kind of where we're at right now in the process and identifying properties that kind of fits what I'm looking for.
Perfect. Okay, so you got pre-approved. You're looking at multifamilies, 2 to 4 units. Best way to get into real estate. So what's stopping you now?
I would say right now it's just identifying I don't want to even say it's stopping me, so to speak, but it's just identifying in real estate, it's all about numbers. Numbers have to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, then, it's a business. And I think right now what we're finding is we have a lot of people that are still putting in offers 15, 20K above asking. And for a perfect example, last week, there was a 4-unit in an area identified here in Louisville that would definitely be great for investment. And there was a listing price of $300, and we did make an offer. And then someone came in and offered, I believe, 10 to 15 above asking. And just looking at those numbers, for 300, it made sense. For 315, 320, or whatever it would probably became a bidding war. It wouldn't have made sense. So I guess right now is just, making sure you stay true to your strategy and, let the numbers dictate it. If the numbers make sense, then it's a go. And if it doesn't, on to the next.
Yeah, Shaq, you hit it directly the nail on the head. So I think it depends on if the numbers make sense at the end of the day. So when I'm thinking about this, there's been plenty of times that I've lost deals by literally $5,000 or $10,000, and these are properties priced at like $260 to $300. Now, if you think about the appreciation that happens each year, $5,000 or $10,000 doesn't mean shit over the course of that actual life of the investment. So I wouldn't be necessarily worried about paying $5,000 or $10,000 more when you're doing this, because generally, if the numbers make sense at 300, 305 or 310, it probably still makes sense in some fashion, just a little bit smaller. I would also say, as you're making these offers too, you can make an offer at 320 if you want to, but when you have that appraisal contingency built into your offer, when you actually run that appraisal, if it comes back less, you have that protection there, and it's another negotiation point for you to use as well.
Yeah, I think that's certainly some great advice. And what I learned about the FHA loan is that a lot of sellers, that's not their favorite type of financing to deal with, because there are so many layers of protection for the folks like me who are trying to invest. And, so I think that's certainly some great advice. When it comes to real estate investing, I've heard it throughout the spectrum. There are some folks that 10% cash on cash return for them is good. There are some other folks, the high rollers, so to speak, that they say, hey, if it's anything below 20, 25% cash on cash return, I'm not touching it. For those who are like myself, who are just starting out, we don't have an an immense amount of capital. Should we look at cash on cash return if you're trying to house hack?
Yes. Short answer is yes. So I think using the cash on cash return is always important. So when you're using your house hack, try to price the property if you're not even going to be living in that. Because hypothetically, if you buy a duplex or quadplex, you might refinance out after a year, and then you can have that full investment running by itself. Now, obviously, you're going to be living there. So with you living there, if you can run your cash on cash return to the point where maybe you're breaking even on your numbers or up to 10% cash on cash, totally fine. Because if you're using 3.5 to 5%, it's going to be very difficult to do this. I was able to do a house hack on a duplex that I lived in Austin. It took me about 4 to 5 months to find this. I looked at 130 different homes, and I found, I think it was 5 duplexes that could make it work. I actually put offers on 3 and then closed on 1. And then my cash on cash return on that place was, I think, 10 or 11%. Super difficult to find. I was just very patient along the way. So for you, it can be very easy to run these numbers, try to find a cash on cash return even for like 5 or 10% with an FHA loan. That's probably still worth it, especially when you refinance out, take the PMI off in the next year or two.
And I think you spoke about something that a lot of folks, when they're now starting out, patience, right? Not everything that you see is going to work. And how difficult was it for you when you spoke about in Austin searching for properties, and were there some times where you felt defeated, or kind of what was your mindset?
Yeah. Shaq, I assume you're asking because you may feel a little bit of defeat in you right now as you're looking for these. Is that right?
I was going to say, it definitely gets tough. It definitely gets tough. It's like, oh, I think I've identified something. And then, either the seller doesn't want FHA financing, or again, the numbers don't work.
Yeah. So it can be a giant pain in the ass sometimes. So I think to myself, you can get your panties in a twist and be pissed off, but that's not going to help anybody. So just think of it over a long plan. I mean, it took me legitimately like 5 months to find this, and we're looking at more than 100 homes. It's insane. My realtors hated me, but at the same point, they got paid at the end of the day. I think staying true to your principles and not getting super bent up out of shape and saying, I need to jump into this market. I will do whatever it takes to get into this market. Take your time. Make sure the numbers make sense. And even if the numbers don't necessarily make sense, if you need to put in maybe $5,000 or $10,000 more, whatever it's going to be, that's not always an issue. And you can always kind of play around with the numbers a little bit. You could always even negotiate directly with the listing agent if you wanted to, if you knew the market that well. You can ask for a credit back at closing if you give a higher amount. There's so many different variables you can play with too.
Yeah. For you, was it acquiring that first property? What were some of your challenges that you kind of went through acquiring that, whether it was unexpected expenses or whatnot?
Yeah, the first property, I would say I'm pretty blessed because it was pretty easy. Looking back, it was pretty easy. At the beginning, it was a lot of deal analysis by paralysis. Deal analysis paralysis. That's the way to say it. Yes. So I think there was a lot of thinking going into it, making sure it could work, running the numbers once, twice, 3, literally 10 times, making sure that it could work with what I was hoping to get out of it. Did a small renovation, did some flooring change, did a little bit of painting on the inside. Thankfully, I listened to so much of Bigger Pockets that I knew I could really reduce the vacancy I had on the front end after this renovation by listing this below market value just a little bit. And that ultimately helped me get this rented out within, I think it was 3 days of the renovation being completely finished. So, and I have a tenant in there who's been there for the past 3 to 5 years, 3 years, more or less. And he wants to sign like a 10-year lease with me. He's great. Some of the other challenges I've had when I'm thinking of, say, the duplex that I lived in or just renovations in general, when I've had to do renovations, it's finding the absolute right contractors to work with. Someone who can show up on time, shows up consistently, gets the job done, and you pay them well. I'm even to the point where I have some contractors who I know they're undercharging, and I'll purposely give them extra money just to build loyalty with them too. So when I ultimately need more work, they can help me out with that. I have had problems with tenants before. I did increase the rent on one of my tenants from $1,000 to $2,000, which is what market rent was for that property. At first, it was fine, and eventually, I had to deal with an eviction. I had to deal with someone getting physically aggressive. I had to deal with them literally shooting a gun in the backyard in a residential neighborhood, which you just don't do that. So it's a lot of different things. I'd say contractors, partnership deals, evictions in general. There's so many different challenges that will come across, and you just have to be patient. And as you're going through the process, realize this is a long journey, and you should be grateful for the challenges that you have, because that's what's going to make you a better investor at the end of the day.
So for those instances that you were just referring to about the eviction, did you manage your properties yourself, or did you have a property manager to do it? Because one of the things that I'm juggling right now is whether or not I should manage it myself or hire a property manager. And that does play a factor in my numbers when I do evaluate properties.
Yeah, so I manage all my properties myself. Across these 13 doors, I manage all of them. Some people think it's a little bit crazy, but I think it's probably one of the easiest things to do. It depends on what type of investor you want to be, and also the condition of the property, as well as the tenant quality that you have too. So for most of my properties, I'm working with anywhere from, say, like a C plus to even an A property. Thankfully, when I have these properties, generally buying them distressed, so I'll do all my work on the front end because I specifically don't want to deal with like an AC unit falling apart in the middle of the summertime. From there, I'll find the absolute best tenant who can generally manage things themselves. I'll tell them, I don't want to get in your business as much as you don't want to get inside my business. And three, it's just running a very concrete process. It's making sure that you have a good process and system in place to make it easy for all parties. So I don't manage, or I don't hire a property manager for any of my properties. Now, it might be different for other folks. If you're, say, an airline pilot, you are away from your phone for a long time. If you're a news reporter, you might be busy for hours at a time. It's something to consider. But you also know your property best. So Shaq, for yourself, like when you're at work, you probably can't be in your phone too much. But if there's a life-threatening emergency, the tenant should know to call 911. If the AC blew out in the middle of the summertime and they reach out to you, it could be at, say, 10 in the morning, and you get off work at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, just respond to them that day, make sure that you absolutely get on it. As long as you're on it within 24 hours, totally fine. If it's life-threatening, they'll call the right people. But I think it's important starting out to actually do it yourself so you understand what the process looks like of being a landlord, how to deal with tenants, and as you start scaling up, say if you end up getting 16 units across the next 4 years, maybe then you know exactly how to find the right property manager. So there's pros and cons of both. I think for you starting out, there's a lot of value in doing it yourself.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you hit it right on the head. It's I know what kind of tenant I was when I rented out when I was renting an apartment, and for me, I know when I'm at work, I'm at work, and there may be times where I'm in an area where there's no cell phone service covering the news of the day, and a tenant may reach out, hey, I have a leak or X, Y, and Z. And it's like, oh crap, like I'm not nowhere near it or whatnot. So I think it's something that I'm still weighing my options, but I'm not against operating the unit myself. I just got to make sure I have the proper team around me.
Yeah, I'd say starting out, you might be thinking to yourself, like, can I actually handle this? The answer is yes. Like, Shaq, I know you well enough that you can run towards problems and deal with it as it comes. Now, there's a little bit of prevention that you can do with these tenants. What is it? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So when you're starting this lease with people, you make it very abundantly clear where you say, I run a very busy schedule. I don't want to be in your business as much as you don't want me in your business too. So set that in place. The second thing is in your lease itself, right in there that repairs less than $100 are up to the tenant's responsibility. The third thing that you might come across a lot is plumbing stoppages. So I actually write it into the lease. If there's a plumbing stoppage, it's the responsibility of the tenant. Now that might get complicated if you're sharing a sewer line in a duplex up to quadplex, but generally they'll know if there's a plumbing backage, they need to work directly with a plumbing company. And you can set that up if you want to, but that falls under a tenant responsibility. Same with AC filters, making sure that gets changed out on a monthly basis, and then just doing periodic walkthroughs. You can do a walkthrough every, call it 6 to 8 weeks if you wanted to. Just, it's an easy time for you as a landlord to walk in and say, hey, I just want to check on this air filter, want to make sure everything's looking good. And then you get to understand what's going on in the apartment. You get to do a little bit of preventative maintenance to it as needed. But it's just making sure that you have eyes on your asset.
With you investing throughout different areas, how often do you get to do a walkthrough on some of those properties, or do you have someone else do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with my properties that I have in Austin, now that I live in Orlando, I'm actually not doing walkthroughs too often. But I know the tenants there, they take such immaculate care of the place because I did so many walkthroughs at the time when I lived in Austin that I do trust them. Now, that said, as much as I can trust them, I need to make sure that I still protect the asset. So I'll do preventative biannual HVAC tune-ups, and that helps out tremendously for when things go wrong. That's probably the biggest issue they're going to come across is the AC, especially in Texas. So I can easily delegate that. Now, here in Orlando, I'll probably do a walkthrough every, say, 2 to 3 months. Just go in place, check on things, chit-chat with the tenants a little bit, make sure they feel, that I care about them and their unit too. But it's a great opportunity for me to walk through every 2 or 3 months, take the condition of the place. If something is in a lease violation, I can address it at that point in time. If not, I can shake their hands and say, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate you taking care of this place. It's easy for you if you're going to be living in a quadplex to say maybe 2 or 3 months, hey, just want to check on this, make sure everything's good. Or if you're living right next door, say, hey, I actually want to make sure that we do the AC filters on a monthly basis. I'll do it myself because I want to make sure it's done the right way. I'll come on the first of the month. Easy as that.
Well, how was that when you first started doing those walkthroughs, and did you know what to look out for?
Yeah, so originally I didn't know what to look out for. I was trying to see if there was anything blaring red. So during these walkthroughs, I always want to check on the major mechanicals. So I want to look at the roof. I want to look at, say, the HVAC unit, the water heater, make sure it's all running operational. I want to ask the tenant themselves, figure out if there's anything that's wrong, if we need to pay attention to anything. I want them to reiterate what things they love too, so I can keep that in mind if I need to list the place in the future. But I'm also looking to see what type of potentially out of compliance things they might be doing. Is the grass overgrown? Do they have someone parking on a septic tank? Do they have, someone drawing on the walls? Do they have another person in the house? Like anything. Do they have a dog? All things that are important to note, which you don't really get from managing completely out of state and not being able to check on it. It's being able to check in on it every once in a while to protect your asset, but making sure you word it to them of saying, I want to make sure you're happy, and I want to make sure that if there's anything wrong in the house, I can take a look and fix it for you right away.
And when it comes to building those relationships with your tenants, I've heard it both ways. I've heard some tenants don't even know who their landlord is. You seem like you're a person that you want to have that, you want to build that relationship, and as a result in low vacancy rates for your properties.
Yeah, so I really enjoy being a landlord. So for me, I actually run a 0% vacancy across all my properties because I also write it into my lease that within 60 days of the lease renewal, they need to tell me if they're going to renew or not. As soon as they say no, I'm immediately listing it for rent that day. And then I can easily show it as much as needed. I have it in my lease that I can show the property. But the best way to build a great relationship is on the front end. It's making sure that you have somebody who is highly qualified, credit check, background check. You walk through the property, you get to shake their hand and you figure out, do I feel like they're going to be a pain in my ass, or are they going to be easy to work with? Now, I had a showing recently at one of my other properties where I had 3 or 4 people show up one day for a tour, and I always break it up in 15-minute increments. The first person was pretty nice. I didn't have any issues with them. And then when I had my second and third people coming there, one person was very aggressive, trying to jump into the house above her pre-planned time. And then the other people were sitting very, in the back, very gently, just waiting their time. When they came in the house, the second folks, they were super excited. They literally brought out their checkbook right then and there. I said, we want this house. Let's do this. Now, the third people, when they came in, they were very assertive. It was actually my mom's house I was renting out, but they were trying to mess with the dogs a little bit. Like they were antagonizing the dogs. They were asking a lot of questions that I kind of had a weird feeling about, and just a weird gut feeling. And those gut feelings can tell you a lot. You still need to stick with your general housing standards for renting out a house. But sometimes you can get a really good indicator of how these people are going to be based on your gut. I saw them like basically scolding their kids inside the house for very small things. And I knew there was probably going to be some kind of problems. So it's kind of a multi-factor thing, but it all starts on the front end.
Do you feel like some of those things, because you manage it yourself and you vet those tenants yourself, you're able to kind of rely on your gut feeling and whatnot in comparison to maybe having a property manager do it and you taking the hands-off approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just depends on if people think it's worth the money. So it always comes down to price what you pay, value what you get. In this sense, with having a property manager collecting generally a 10% monthly rate for something like this, I don't think it's worth it, because my gross rents of my properties are about $280,000 a year, give or take. Now I'm going to be paying someone $28,000 a year to literally collect a rent check and deposit into my bank account once a month. My properties are all in very good condition, and it's super low stress as it is. Sometimes I might have an issue where a tenant's having an issue with their AC or their water heater or whatever it could be, but I'm generally spending 2 to 4 hours a month on that. Now, if you think about that, is it 2 to 4 hours a month that I might be investing into something like this? Is it worth me paying someone $28,000 a year for? For me, the answer is no. I can deal with the shit that will happen because it's fun for me. I actually like the process. And also with the way that my properties are conditioned, it's not worth it. And same for you. If you're going to be doing some house hacking where you're going to be living next door, it's probably not going to be worth it for you, because somebody can easily just knock on your door. They can give you a phone call, say, hey, the AC went out. Can you get on top of this in the next couple days? Easy as that. Now, if you decide to move from, say, Louisville to a different market, could be New York, Florida, whatever it's going to be, you might need to engage with a management company to help you manage it, or you just work out a deal with one of the tenants of saying, hey, I want you to show the house to someone else. I'll give you $200 if you end up renting it out for me. Something like that. There's so many creative ways of doing it. I personally don't believe in property management until you scale it up to a point where, say, if you're buying a 10 or 20 unit apartment complex, in that sense, probably just have a property manager, because there's going to be so many inherited tenants. It's going to be a pain in the ass sometimes to deal with, versus, smaller multifamily, single family homes. Those are easy to work with.
What's your piece of advice, your one piece of advice that you would have for someone who is thinking about investing, but they don't want to pull that trigger just yet?
My one piece of advice, I would probably say my one piece of advice for those starting out would be to make sure that you don't fear the process itself. Don't be afraid of running all of the deal analysis that you need to. Don't fall into deal analysis paralysis. Don't also be fearful of waiting too long. This is the perfect time to buy real estate. And if the numbers make sense now, it's going to make sense in a year from now too. And as you come across some of these issues that will inevitably be in some of these properties, whatever they could be, lean into it and actually be grateful that you have these issues. The issues and challenges you come across, you're going to be a very fortunate person to have these, because most people can't afford these type of challenges. So if you have that perspective, it'll make that experience as a landlord so much better. Otherwise, if you're fearful about the market, if you're fearful about how much time it takes to run deal analysis, if you're fearful about dealing with evictions or dealing with bad renovations or whatever, you're going to have a bad time, like straight up. So if you kind of take it with a grain of salt and say, I'm excited for this, I'm excited for the challenges, I'm excited for the pain, it'll be incredible for you. I mean, I'll tell you, last year was probably the toughest year of my life. August specifically, I had not only the death of my father, I had an eviction I was going through. I had a renovation in Maui where it should have been 2 weeks, but it turned into a 2.5 month renovation. I had a different renovation going on, and I still had to work my W-2 job. So you can look at that and pull a cover over your head and just say, this fucking sucks. I don't like this. This is not fun. Or you think to yourself, when you're 40, 50, 60, could I deal with some of these challenges that came? Am I happy that I had these challenges, and did I grow from this? And that's kind of the magic behind it too. You had the luxury of dealing with all these challenges, so embrace them.
Certainly some great advice, Greg. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Shaq, it's been great chatting with you. Thank you.
Thank you.